forward the 7 into the 6 spot, allowing the 8 to erupt. The 8 never had a bracket on it. It just followed through transseptal fiber pull and came in the right spot. And on the left side, we protracted 5, 6, 7 and allowed the 8 to erupt. Of course, it's going to be an asymmetric occlusion now, but it's highly functional. And this is a little blurry, but the midlines are still good. Overjet is good. You can see a solid class 1 on the right side, even though we have a second molar occluding with the first molar, and we have a third molar occluding with the second molar. So we're using these wisdom teeth. And on the other side, it's a solid class 2 because we protracted only a bicuspid width, but you can see class 1 canine, and then class 2 molar and class 2 molar. Beautiful. And we took advantage of the third molars being there, and we used the TADS to avoid a dental implant, to avoid a crown and a root canal. So the orthodontics already paid for itself because we avoid all that dental work, and in the US that is a substantial amount. In Cleveland, a dental implant with a crown is about $4,000 US. A root canal on a 3-rooted molar, and maybe it had more roots, and a crown, well, you're looking at about $3,000 for that. So we're talking about $7,000, and the orthodontics was about the same. But full mouth of healthy, virgin teeth in a 19-year-old girl. How perfect is that? No implants, no crowns, no root canals. That's what I like to see. And so this is sort of the pre-treatment or pre-debond panel, and you can see how the third molars have just followed into place really nicely. And now I want to show you how you can use the T-wire and what you can do with the T-wire. So it's going to be a similar case to Diamond's case where we protract, but this time instead of using 2 buccal TADS, we're going to use 2 palatal TADS, and we're going to use a T-wire. So this is an oligodontia patient. She's missing a lot of teeth congenitally, and her general dentist had planned her for a removable partial denture. And a 16-year-old girl, she wasn't too excited about that. So he sent her to the university, where she ended up becoming my patient. And we did plan to protract a lot, because if you look very closely, this is a peg lateral. She's missing the lateral on the right side. These are actually deciduous canines, and she's missing 2 lower incisors. That's the pano that comes from a cone beam. And you can see the peg lateral. You can see the deciduous cuspids here and here. And you can see the missing lower incisors. So our goal was to protract on the left side completely and bring the bicuspid up against the lateral. And on the right side, we could have probably protracted all the way and brought the bicuspid up against the central, but like I say, I'm not a hero, so we didn't go for that. We decided to protract until we set her up for a single lateral incisor implant. On the lower, no mini implants. On the lower, we're just opening up the space for a single implant with a double crown. And that's her Ceph. Don't worry about the numbers, just visually look at it, and you'll realize that her upper incisors are a little flat. Can you see that? They kind of tip back a little bit. That's a bad outset for molar protraction, because normally molar protraction will tip the incisors back more, right? So keep that in mind and think about that when we look at the superimposition at the end. How do we set this case up? Well, first of all, I told you this was a case from the university, so this was done by one of my residents. Residents tend to be super motivated, okay? So the way I do this case is I place 2 TADS in a row, but I don't run the T-wire through both slots. I just run the T-wire through the first slot, so I make the first slot in line with the sagittal plane, and I run the T-wire through the first slot, and then I have it sitting on top of the second TAD, okay? Because if you think about it, if we're on the palate, that anterior slope, the first TAD will sit a little lower than the second TAD. So if I run the T-wire through it, it will sit on top of the second TAD, and I will just bond it to the second TAD. Now my resident, by bending like an expert, actually ran the wire from both slots. Because it's a 2125 stainless steel wire, that wire sat in there so tightly you didn't even need composite anymore to cement it in place. But we did, obviously. And you can see we also built up the lateral incisor a little bit, or had the dentist build up the lateral incisor. And now we're just protracting. And this is sort of the sequence. We took out the baby canines, and we're protracting. We got to do a little midline management here. And then we finished her like this. Her teeth got better, her hair got worse. But, you know, who am I to joke about hair, right? It's just, I'd be lucky to have that hair. So, you can see that we have a perfect space for a lateral incisor, a perfect setup for a lower implant with a double crown, and she was not ready financially to get a dental implant done yet. So we retained it with a Pontic on a Hawley. And while that's fine on the lower, she's a 19-year-old girl. She's just entering that age where dating becomes important. And we're missing a tooth in the front when you have a dinner with somebody is really not a good thing. And so she asked if we couldn't do anything else about that. And it's hard to find doctors in the US, dentists in the US that do Maryland bridges anymore because they're not so predictable. So what we ended up doing was really restoring that side with a Thomas pin. And you basically treat it like a regular dental implant. You make sure that you're parallel to the roots of the adjacent teeth. You want to make sure that you look at the ceph and look at the angulation of the incisors and put it in the same angulation so you don't come out the labial plate. And then you restore it. Now back then we didn't have the cap that snaps on the Thomas EP pin, so we had to freehand it. But we have a little bit of expertise there, and so we did that. And that's how it turned out. This is the Pontic on the TAD. That's the built-up lateral. And that's the Pontics on the Hawley. I think that's not a bad final setup. And the proof is in the pudding. She still does not have a dental implant in today because she's so happy with the way we did that, okay? We saw her last about 2 years ago, and again, this case is about 6 years old. So this stuff works. But I want just a little cautionary comment on using crestal TADS. Some people say they go along for the ride. As the alveolar process grows, they come down with it. They don't create a vertical defect. That is absolutely wrong. They do not go along for the ride. They will create a vertical defect if you place them in a growing patient. They are no different than a dental implant in that regards. It does not matter if you have an activated surface like a dental implant has, or a highly polished shank like our orthodontic mini implants do. What drives vertical development of the alveolar process is the periodontal ligament. You're missing a tooth there, you're putting an implant there, there is no vertical development. What it really comes down to is a philosophical question. Does it cause a greater vertical defect or an equally large vertical defect as a dental implant, or as having nothing there? And what Bertha Melson showed very, very nicely is that it actually maintains the transverse width of the alveolar process, which that is great because, you know, bone grafts to augment the width of the alveolar process are very unpredictable, but it will create a vertical defect. And if you want to know what Bertha does, she also uses a cross-slot implant, and she's got the niftiest solution if you like to tinker around. She puts the TAD not crestally, but she puts it in from the palate into the alveolar process, like you saw in the very first case I just showed you. And then she puts a rectangular wire into the TAD and runs it here with the loop at the end and bonds the Pontic to that wire. So she suspends the pontic off that wire. Very cool solution, published in the AJO with long-term follow-up data.